She bit into my pants and wouldn't let go. Only when I followed did I hear it, the cry buried under the snow. It was just past noon in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The snow along Lake of the Isles Park lay heavy and untouched, like thick frosting on a forgotten cake. I'd taken a short detour from my shift, coffee in hand, hoping a quick walk would quiet the pounding in my head. But I wasn't more than 5 steps onto the trail when I felt the tug. A German Shepherd puppy, no more than 4 months old, covered in frost and shaking like a leaf, was latched onto my pants with all the strength she had left. Her eyes locked onto mine, wide and wild, filled with something deeper than fear, urgency. I looked around. Joggers passed by, heads down, earbuds in. An elderly woman glanced over, then away. Nobody stopped. Nobody cared. But she wouldn't let go. Not until I bent down and whispered, "What is it, girl?" That's when she barked, one sharp cry, and bolted into the trees just off the main path. I followed, slipping in the deep snow. Branches snapped against my coat. The trees closed in. Then I heard it, a thin, broken sound from under the snow. I dropped to my knees, the cold biting through my scrubs as I swept snow aside with bare hands. She was pawing furiously at a pile of tangled branches, whimpering and growling in turns. Her breath fogged the air like smoke from a dying fire, and then I saw a paw, limp, too still. Another German Shepherd puppy, half buried, motionless. I'm Dr. Marcus Hale, 45, emergency medicine. I've seen a lot of things, but nothing prepared me for this moment. On my knees in the snow, one puppy crying for another, and no one else willing to stop. Her sister wasn't moving, and I couldn't feel a pulse. But Astra, the one who'd found me, refused to leave. She nudged her sister's face with her nose again and again, and then looked up at me like I was the last hope she had left. And that's when I heard it, a barely audible squeak from under the branches. I shoved the branches aside with both hands, not caring that they scraped my wrists raw. The snow beneath them was packed hard, almost like ice. Astra barked again, sharp and pleading, circling once before pressing her tiny body against the mound. Then I saw her, Vega. She was smaller than Astra, her fur soaked and matted with snow. One of her back legs was twisted at a sickening angle, pinned under a crooked branch. Her breathing was shallow, lips pale, eyes closed tight. She didn't flinch when I touched her. I placed 2 fingers gently on her ribs. Slow, faint movement. Still alive. I didn't say anything. My throat locked up. Astra whined, then lay down beside Vega, curling her body around her sister like a blanket. That image, 2 German Shepherd puppies in the snow, one guarding the other, it hit me harder than any emergency room tragedy I'd ever seen. I pulled off my jacket, wrapped Vega in it as best I could. She was ice cold. My stethoscope was back in the car, but I didn't need it. I knew what hypothermia looked like, and I knew time was running out. "I've got you," I whispered, sliding one arm beneath her and lifting gently. Astra stood up immediately, pressed against my side, tail stiff. She didn't make a sound. She just walked with me. The snow crunched under my boots, and I kept my eyes ahead, pretending I didn't feel Vega's body getting heavier in my arms. I couldn't look down. I crossed the path, passing 2 men in designer coats. One of them raised an eyebrow, but neither stopped. A woman sipping from a holiday-themed Starbucks cup glanced over, then looked away. "They'll be fine," one of the men muttered. "It's just nature." I stopped, turned slightly. "Not today," I said. "Not these 2. Astra turned too. She looked that man straight in the eyes, ears back, posture low but unflinching. She didn't growl. She didn't have to. I picked up the pace. My car was parked just outside the trail entrance. Vega's breathing was barely audible now. We didn't have time. The heat in the car blasted as I cranked the dial all the way. I laid Vega across the passenger seat, still wrapped in my jacket, and Astra jumped in after her, curling around her body again like instinct took over. Her eyes never left her sister's face. I drove with one hand on the wheel, the other resting lightly on Vega's side. Her breathing was shallow, too shallow. Every bump in the road felt like a betrayal. Every red light felt like a death sentence. I'm a doctor. I've seen cardiac arrest, trauma, life slipping through fingers in the ER. But this was different. This was personal. When I was 21, during a residency rotation in Duluth, we got a call about a house fire. They brought in a child and a dog, both unconscious. I worked on the kid. My supervisor worked on the dog. The kid made it. The dog didn't. I didn't talk about it again. Until now. Astra whimpered. She pressed her nose against Vega's ear, then gave a short, sharp bark as if willing her back. "Hold on," I muttered. "Come on, little one. Hold on." I flew through a yellow light and didn't care. My badge from the hospital was still clipped to my coat. If someone pulled me over, I'd show them the puppies and let that speak for itself. The clinic came into view, Waverly Emergency Vet, a place I'd consulted for before. I pulled up onto the curb, threw the car into park, and scooped Vega back into my arms. The receptionist looked up and opened her mouth to speak, but I didn't give her the chance. 4-month-old German Shepherd puppy. Severe hypothermia. Possible crush injury to rear limb. Still breathing. They moved fast. Tex took Vega from me. Astra tried to follow, barking furiously when they closed the double doors between them. She reared up, scratching at the glass, whining so loud people in the waiting room turned to look. "She needs to see her," I said quietly. The nurse behind the desk gave me a hesitant look. "She saved her life. Don't separate them now." A moment later, they opened the door just enough to let Astra slip through. She disappeared down the hall, her nails clicking on the tile, her bark echoing off the walls. I collapsed into a waiting room chair, still wearing wet gloves and a soaked sweater. My chest ached, not from the cold, something else, something deeper. The hallway lights flickered once. Then everything went still. I stared at the hallway like it might give me an answer, but all I got was silence. The kind of silence that thickens the air and makes you feel like breathing is a chore. Astra had gone quiet too. Somewhere beyond the doors, she was with her sister, guarding, waiting, refusing to let go. I sat there motionless, elbows on knees, heart hammering out a rhythm I didn't like. A woman near me glanced over. She wore a tailored coat, suede boots that hadn't seen snow, and the kind of diamond earrings you don't wear to a vet. She sipped from a pristine Starbucks holiday cup and leaned toward her husband, whispering too loudly to ignore. "Are those the dogs from the trail?" she asked. He barely looked up from his phone. "Probably strays. Let nature do its job." The words hit harder than I expected. I clenched my jaw, swallowed the burn rising in my throat. I wanted to ask him if he'd ever seen one puppy cry for another. If he'd ever watched a 4-month-old risk everything just to get someone, anyone, to help. Instead, I stood up and walked out into the snow, needing air, needing space. The wind hit me hard, flurries dancing sideways across the lot. My jacket was still soaked, but I didn't care. I watched as a black SUV pulled up to the curb and idled. Inside, 2 teenagers laughed at something on their phones. The driver glanced at the clinic, then sped off without getting out. This world, sometimes, it made me tired. But then I thought of Astra, of the way she looked at me, of how she refused to leave Vega's side even when she couldn't help her, of the bark she let out when the clinic doors closed, that demand to be let through. She wasn't tired. She was fire in the snow. I walked back inside. The nurse at the counter met my eyes and gave a soft nod. "They've stabilized her breathing," she said, "but it's not over yet." Behind the glass, I saw Astra through the observation window. She was curled up beside Vega on the heat pad, her head rising and falling with slow, shallow breaths. She wasn't sleeping. She was watching. Always watching. I pressed my palm to the glass. "Not this time," I whispered. "I won't let the world forget you." They let me scrub in and stand by as they worked. Not because I asked, because I wouldn't leave, and because Astra wouldn't either. She refused to be moved from the side of the metal table where Vega lay, hooked up to a heat lamp, fluids, oxygen. Every time a monitor beeped, Astra's ears twitched. Every time someone leaned in, she growled softly, not with aggression, but with fear. Protective fear. The attending vet, Dr. Lee, looked over at me while adjusting the IV line. "She's holding on," she said, voice steady, but barely. Vega's body was so small on that table. Shaved patch on her side, bandaged leg, breath coming in stutters. Her nose was cracked and dry. Her eyes still hadn't opened. "Lungs are weak," Lee continued. "Probably early pneumonia, but it's the leg I'm worried about. She can't feel it. Might have lost circulation too long." I didn't respond. I couldn't. My throat felt like it had been rubbed raw with sandpaper. Astra stood on her hind legs trying to get closer. One of the techs moved to gently hold her back, but I raised my hand. "Let her stay." They backed off. Astra lowered her head, nose brushing her sister's ear, and gave the softest whimper I'd ever heard, like she was afraid even sound might break her. Then she did something I'll never forget, She pressed her forehead against Vega's, closed her eyes, and stayed like that. Still. Silent. That little German Shepherd puppy had more love in her than most people I'd ever known. "She's regulating her breathing," Lee murmured, almost to herself. She's syncing with her." Minutes passed. Maybe more. It was impossible to tell in that room. The world had shrunk down to blinking lights and ticking machines and two puppies, one fighting to live, one refusing to let go. I leaned closer, whispered, "Come on, little one. She needs you." Astra's ear flicked toward me, like she heard. Then she returned to stillness. The monitors beeped in uneven rhythm. The vet adjusted the oxygen again. Another drip began. Then the sound changed. Not an alarm, just a shift. The kind that makes everyone in the room stop breathing. Vega exhaled, long, low, and fragile. And for a second I thought that was it, until Astra barked, once, sharp, urgent, and Vega's chest rose again. The room froze. No one moved. Even the machines seemed to pause in that instant between sound and silence. Then Vega inhaled again, shaky, uneven, but undeniably real. Her ribs lifted beneath the wires and blankets, then dropped slowly. Astra barked once more, shorter this time, as if she knew she'd reached her. Dr. Lee leaned over the table, eyes locked on the monitor. "She's trying," she said, half-whisper. "She's not out of the woods, but she's trying." I took a breath for the first time in what felt like hours. The air in the room seemed lighter, thinner, like we were all waiting for permission to believe it. Astra moved closer, resting her head on the crook of Vega's neck. That soft rumble, somewhere between a purr and a growl, came from deep in her chest. Comfort, recognition, a sister's call. Vega's ear twitched. Everyone in the room saw it. The tech gasped. I closed my eyes just for a second and felt something I hadn't let myself feel since I found them in the snow. Hope. I sat down slowly beside the observation bench and let my back rest against the wall. My legs ached. My shoulders were stiff. My coat was still damp and clinging to me, but I didn't care. In front of me, two German Shepherd puppies, one broken, one brave, had just shifted the entire atmosphere of a sterile emergency room. The attending vet adjusted Vega's blanket, then looked at me. "Her heartbeat's irregular," she said cautiously, "and she's still in critical condition. But that response, that's something. That's her saying she's still in the fight." I nodded, because Astra called her back. Outside, the sky had started to fade from gray to deep blue. Snow tapped gently against the clinic windows. A few people came and went in the waiting room, but they all seemed quieter now, as if something sacred was happening just beyond the glass. I stepped out briefly to call a friend who could cover my shift at the hospital. I wasn't going anywhere tonight. When I returned, Astra was curled tightly around Vega again, their bodies nestled together on the warming pad. For a moment, it looked like they'd both fallen asleep. Then Vega twitched again. Just a paw. A small, tentative stretch forward. But it was movement. Her first conscious choice to respond. I looked at the nurse and saw the same disbelief in her eyes that I felt in my chest. The smallest victories always land the hardest. By midnight, the clinic lights dimmed and the front desk emptied. Only the hum of machines and the occasional whisper from the overnight staff broke the silence. I stayed in the corner of the recovery room, a blanket someone handed me draped over my shoulders, but I wasn't sleeping. Neither was Astra. She hadn't left Vega's side once. Every so often, Vega would let out a soft sigh, her paws twitching, like she was chasing something just beyond reach. Astra would shift closer, touch her nose to Vega's cheek, and settle again. That rhythm had become a kind of music in the room. I sat beside the window, an untouched Starbucks cup growing cold in my hand. I couldn't remember where it had come from. One of the nurses, maybe. The cup sat between my fingers like a forgotten prop in someone else's life. When I was 9, I slipped on a frozen lake not far from my grandparents' cabin. I went under. The cold hit so hard I couldn't scream. My dad had a German Shepherd named Leo. I don't know how, but he pulled me out. I don't remember the rescue. Just his eyes, wide and fierce, as he bit into the collar of my coat and dragged me across the ice. I hadn't thought about that in years. Not until tonight. Vega shifted again, this time more than before. Her head lolled slightly, and she let out a weak, wheezy breath. Astra immediately perked up, tail flicking once against the blanket. I stood slowly, light, careful not to startle either of them. Vega's eyes fluttered, just barely, then opened. Only for a second, but they opened. Astra barked softly, not loud, not sharp, a whisper of sound like a greeting. I sank to my knees beside them, heart thudding. Vega blinked once, twice. Her gaze wasn't focused yet, but it was there, present, searching, alive. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding and whispered, "Welcome back." She didn't move much, just the smallest nudge of her nose toward Astra, and Astra, like she'd been waiting for that sign, placed her paw over her sister's like a promise. The beeping of the monitors continued steady and low. Outside, the snow had stopped. The world was still, but in that tiny room, something had shifted again. She wasn't gone. She was coming back. By sunrise, the sky turned a pale watercolor of lavender and gold, casting soft reflections across the frost-covered windows. Inside, it was warm, not from the heaters, but from something deeper, like the room itself was holding its breath with us, not wanting to break whatever fragile miracle had begun. Vega stirred again. Her paw jerked slightly, then her leg. Astra immediately rose, tail thumping once, twice against the mat. She barked, a real bark this time. Not loud, but clear. Calling her sister. Vega's eyes opened slowly. Not the flicker of before, but open and aware. She blinked, once, twice. Then her gaze shifted and landed on Astra. What happened next? I'll never forget it. Vega's nose twitched, and then, slow, shaky, she lifted her head. Barely an inch off the pad, but it was a mountain climbed. Astra leaned in, licking her sister's face in small, fast strokes, tail wagging furiously now. "Easy," I said softly, voice catching in my throat. "You did it. Doctor." Lee entered quietly and froze in the doorway. "She's responding," I said, barely above a whisper. "She's with us." The vet stepped in, checked the monitors, listened to Vega's chest, gently moved her limbs. "Vitals are climbing," she confirmed. "Still weak, but she's out of immediate danger." Astra sat beside her like a proud guardian. Her ears perked, her eyes never leaving Vega's. That bond, more than instinct, more than survival, had carried them both through something I still didn't fully understand. Vega tried to lift her front leg, winced, and let it fall again. Astra licked her paw, as if saying, "I've got you." Dr. Lee turned to me. "The leg may still be at risk. We'll do imaging today, but right now, she's stable." I didn't know whether to sit or collapse. I crouched next to the mat instead and gently scratched Astra behind the ear. She leaned into it for a moment, then looked at me with those same wild, desperate eyes. Only now there was something new in them. Relief. Outside the clinic window, joggers passed on the snowy trail. Some glanced in. None stopped. But I didn't care. Because inside this quiet, glowing room, 2 German Shepherd puppies, Astra and Vega, were breathing together, alive together. And when Vega reached forward, touched noses with her sister, I knew the hardest part might still be ahead. But they weren't alone anymore. A week later, the clinic doors opened to a swirl of cold wind and low sunlight, and out they came, together. Astra moved like she was born for the snow, bounding ahead, kicking up powder with each step. Vega followed slowly behind. One leg still bandaged, her gait uneven but determined. Every few feet, Astra would circle back, nudge Vega gently with her nose, then trot forward again like a guide, like a coach. I stood at the edge of the park path, watching them from a bench with a coffee in hand. Not from Starbucks this time, just a local place the nurses loved. The 2 puppies had grown stronger, braver. Astra's coat gleamed now, black and tan against the snow. Vega still had that haunted look sometimes, but her eyes were brighter. She was awake to the world again. Passers-by paused as they saw the pair. One woman in a long wool coat slowed, watching them intently. "They won't make it far," she muttered to her friend. "That one's too weak." I didn't say anything, just watched Astra circle again, this time placing her body along Vega's side and walking in sync with her, like she was sharing her strength, transferring momentum. "They'll make it," I said quietly to myself. One of the clinic techs had started calling them the sisters. It stuck. We'd done imaging on Vega's leg. The circulation was coming back slowly, and she was regaining sensation, but the recovery would be long. Expensive. The shelter director had called me twice already to say the resources were stretched thin, that placing 2 bonded puppies with medical needs was unlikely. "They're not a case file," I snapped the last time. "They're survivors." Astra dashed ahead again, then returned, crouching in front of Vega like a pup trying to start a game. Vega barked once, her first real bark, high, fragile, but clear. It stopped me cold. She was speaking now, claiming space, living. I rose from the bench and walked toward them. Astra ran to me instantly, tail wagging. Vega followed at her own pace, slow but proud, ears perked, nose twitching in the crisp air. "You're not done yet," I said, kneeling. "But you're not broken either." Astra pressed against me, licking my chin. Vega sniffed my hand, then curled up beside her sister, resting her head gently on Astra's back. In that moment, the doubts fell quiet. Not gone, but quiet. Because whatever the world believed about what two puppies could or couldn't do, these two were rewriting the rules with every step. They called it a recommendation, but it didn't feel like one. I sat across from the shelter board at a folding table that wobbled every time someone shifted their weight. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A coffee pot gurgled in the corner, the bitter smell mixing with the antiseptic tang of cleaner. Across from me sat three faces, tired, polite, and already decided. "We appreciate your involvement, Dr. Hale," said the director, a man with a clipboard and no warmth in his eyes. "But we're at capacity. Bonded pairs are hard to place, and with Vega's prognosis..." He didn't finish the sentence. Just let it hang in the air like a sentence with its own gravity. "We're not saying euthanasia is necessary," another added quickly, "just that rehabilitation may not be the most responsible use of resources." I looked down at the file in front of me. 2 photos. Astra, alert, glowing. Vega, still thin, still limping, but eyes sharp now. Awake. "You're wrong," I said, my voice low but steady. "These two didn't survive everything they've been through just to be crossed out by a spreadsheet." The director sighed. "Emotion is understandable, but our job is to make hard decisions." Behind the door, I heard a sudden bark. Astra. Another bark. Sharper. Then a loud scraping sound. I stood up. Before anyone could stop me, the door to the hallway burst open. Astra charged into the room, Vega close behind her, Black moving slower but with determination. Astra had something in her mouth. Paper. She leapt forward and dropped it on the table. The recommendation form, ripped, crumpled, edges soaked with spit and snowmelt. For a full beat, no one said anything. Vega stood behind her sister, trembling slightly, but standing. Astra planted her front paws on the table and stared at the man with the clipboard. "You can't be serious," one of them said. "She is," I said. "She's more serious than anyone in this room." Silence stretched out, tense and electric. Then one of the women on the board let out a breath. "We've never had a protest from a puppy before." I knelt down, wrapped an arm around Astra's neck, and looked up at them. "You talk about resources, but what about value? These two have already taught more people about resilience than any pamphlet you'll print this year." Vega limped forward and rested her chin on my knee. Her tail thumped once against the tile. I didn't wait for permission, I just said it. "I'm taking them home." They didn't stop me. Maybe it was the way Astra stood her ground, chest out, like she knew exactly what she'd done. Maybe it was Vega, eyes steady despite the limp, leaning into my side like she'd already decided where she belonged. Or maybe they all just knew the truth when they saw it, even if their forms and policies didn't leave space for it. The adoption papers were signed in silence. No celebration, just quiet acknowledgments, a couple of awkward handshakes, and a nurse slipping me a small bag with their meds and records. We stepped outside into the bright afternoon sun. Snow glittered like a million diamonds, and the cold air was clean and sharp in my lungs. Astra bounded forward, leash taut, spinning once before circling back to Vega. Vega walked slower but taller somehow, like she knew she was going home. My car was already packed with supplies, a crate, blankets, food, toys I hadn't realized I'd bought until the receipt buzzed in my inbox. I lifted Vega gently into the back seat, and Astra jumped in beside her without hesitation. They curled together immediately. That night at home, they explored every corner of my small living room like it was a palace. Astra claimed the couch in under 5 minutes. Vega took her time, sniffing everything twice, then settled in the sun-warmed patch of carpet beneath the window. She sighed once, deep and slow, and I knew she finally felt safe. I didn't expect the shift to happen so quickly in me, but as I stood there watching them, one bold, the other cautious, both brave, I felt something in my chest settle that had been restless for years. I'd spent most of my adult life saving lives, but this was different. This wasn't a rescue. This was a beginning. In the following weeks, Vega gained strength. Her leg, though still stiff, responded better each day. Astra became her shadow, her cheerleader, her constant warmth. They played together in the snow-covered backyard, chased falling leaves, barked at delivery trucks like they owned the place. Word spread. Photos from the clinic. The ripped adoption form. The protest. People shared their story. The sisters who survived. Messages poured in. Donations. Letters. One woman wrote, "I was going to give up. Then I saw what they did for each other." A family visited from out of town. Parents, 2 kids, dog lovers. They sat on my floor for an hour while Astra laid her head in the boy's lap, and Vega let the girl braid a ribbon through her collar. The parents looked at each other, then at me. We'd love to give them a forever home. Together. And just like that, I knew it was right. When they left that day, tails high, eyes bright, kids laughing, I stood on the porch longer than I needed to, watching. Astra looked back once, and Vega followed. Not just walking, running. Dogs don't need words to teach us what matters. They do it with their eyes, with loyalty, with actions that cut through all the noise we build around ourselves. Astra never gave up, not when the snow weighed her down, not when no one stopped to help, not when the world told her she was just a stray. She pulled, barked, dragged, and waited, because her sister's life was worth more than silence. And Vega? She fought too, quietly, through pain, through stillness, through the cold that nearly took her. But when she opened her eyes, when she touched noses with Astra, we all understood what real strength looks like. They didn't survive because the system protected them. They survived because of a bond no form, no policy, no budget could account for. And maybe, just maybe, they reminded the rest of us what love looks like when it's stubborn, messy, and fierce. This little girl's journey from abandonment to rehabilitation shows how important nonprofit rescue groups really are. Caring for a rescued puppy is more than love. It's responsibility. It's pet care. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and share. Every time you share a story like this, you help another puppy find their second chance. Join our Brave Paws family. Be their voice. Be their hope.